Rain hammered against the black walls of the alien research facility. The sound echoed faintly through the long, cold corridors, making every step Daniel took feel heavier. He had been working here only 2 weeks, but the place already made his skin crawl. The lights were pale blue, the air smelled of metal and strange chemicals, and the silence was broken only by the hum of machines. Daniel was a human, one of the few allowed to work inside this place. Officially, his job was simple: maintenance and cleaning in the lower levels. Unofficially, everyone told him the same thing: don't look into the rooms. Don't ask questions. He tried to follow that rule until tonight. The lower corridor was colder than usual. Daniel pushed his cleaning cart past locked doors, each with a glowing red panel. Most of the rooms were dark, but then he saw it. Room 47, the glass wall glowed from the inside with a soft white light. Curiosity pulled him closer. He peered through the glass and froze. Inside was a girl, not human, but not like the other aliens he had seen. She sat on a metal bench, her knees drawn up, her arms wrapped around herself. Her skin had a faint silver glow, as if lit from within, and her hair, long and black, fell over her face, hiding her eyes. Thin metal bands circled her wrists and ankles, connected to glowing cables in the walls. The cables pulsed with a faint blue light, like a slow heartbeat. Daniel felt a strange twist in his chest. She looked tired, not just in her body, but in her soul. He didn't know why, but he couldn't move away. The girl slowly raised her head. Her eyes met his, deep, luminous, and filled with something between pain and hope. She opened her mouth, and her voice was barely more than a whisper: help. Daniel's heart skipped. The word was soft, but it carried weight. It was not the voice of someone who had just met trouble. It was the voice of someone who had been in it for years. Before he could say anything, a harsh voice snapped from behind him: move along, human. It was one of the alien guards, tall, armored, and holding a long rifle. Daniel stepped back quickly, mumbling an apology. The guard pressed a button on the wall, and the glass turned opaque, hiding the girl completely. But as Daniel pushed his cart away, the image of her eyes stayed in his mind. He finished his shift in silence, but inside his head, the whisper replayed again and again: help. The next night, he tried not to think about room 47. He told himself it was none of his business, but when his route brought him near that corridor, his feet slowed. This time, the glass was already opaque. Still, he stood there for a moment, staring at the pale glow behind it. Something about that girl's presence seemed to pull at him like gravity. Over the next few days, Daniel noticed things. Guards always passed room 47 in pairs. No one ever went inside except scientists in long, silver coats. Sometimes he thought he heard faint sounds, soft cries, muffled through the thick glass. On the 5th night, something changed. The glass was clear again. The girl sat in the same spot, but now her head was bowed, her hair messy, and her breathing shallow. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He glanced down the hall, no guards in sight. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Hey, can you hear me? Her head lifted slowly. She looked weaker, but her eyes still burned with that same silent plea. They hurt me, she whispered, the words rough and uneven. They call it science, but they take everything. Daniel gripped the edge of the glass. Why? He asked before he could stop himself. Her lips trembled. They fear what I am, what I can do. So they keep me here, break me. Her voice cracked, and for a moment she closed her eyes. I don't want to die here, she added softly. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Daniel backed away quickly, his heart pounding. 2 guards walked past. Giving him a suspicious look, he forced himself to keep walking. But inside, something had shifted. This was no longer just another cleaning job. This was a prison, and she was a prisoner. That night, lying in his small quarters, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept seeing her face, hearing her voice, the way she said help didn't feel like a request anymore. It felt like a chain. And somehow it had wrapped around him. He didn't know it yet, but the moment he looked into her eyes, his life and hers had already begun to change forever. Daniel walked his usual route the next night. The hallways felt colder than before, the hum of the machines sharper when he reached room 47. The glass was clear again. The girl was there, sitting in the same place. But this time she was looking at the door before he even appeared. There? Eyes met. Daniel hesitated, glancing both ways down the corridor. No guards, no scientists. He stepped closer, keeping his voice low. "You okay?" She tilted her head slightly. Her hair shifted, revealing a faint bruise along her temple. They didn't like what I said, she whispered. Her words were slow, as if speaking took effort. "But you came back." Daniel swallowed. He wasn't sure why he had come back, only that something inside him refused to stay away. "I had to," he said. "I couldn't stop thinking about you." For a moment, she just stared at him. Then she moved closer to the glass, her fingers pressing lightly against it. The metal band on her wrist glowed faintly, and Daniel noticed small marks along her skin where the cuff had burned her. "My name is Lyra," she said. Her voice was soft, like she was afraid the air itself might carry her words to the wrong ears. "What's yours?" "Daniel," he replied, pressing his hand against the glass where hers rested. What do they want from you?" Lyra glanced toward the ceiling, then the walls, as if she could feel the cameras watching. "They test me," she said. "Make me use my power. Take my blood. Study my mind." She paused, her eyes hardening. "They call it progress. But it's a cage." Daniel's jaw tightened. He wanted to ask more. But heavy footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. A guard was making his rounds. Daniel stepped back quickly, pretending to check his cleaning cart. The guard passed without stopping. When he was gone, Lyra leaned close again. "Daniel, I hear things," she whispered. "The scientists say in 7 days, the experiment ends." Her voice dropped even lower. "That means I end." The words hit Daniel like a blow. He stared at her, his mind racing. "End? You mean," she nodded slowly, "they don't let failures live." Daniel felt something shift inside him, a spark of anger that quickly became fire. He had been telling himself there was nothing he could do. Now he knew that was a lie. Over the next nights, he found reasons to be in her corridor more often. Sometimes he just passed by to let her see him, to let her know she wasn't alone. Other times, when the hallway was empty, they whispered through the glass. Lyra told him pieces of her story, how her own people feared her gift, how they called her unstable, how the Science Council decided she was safer locked away than free. Daniel brought her small things when he could. A sealed water pack, a folded piece of cloth so she wouldn't have to sleep on cold metal once. He even smuggled in a tiny holoscreen with recordings of alien skies and forests. Lyra watched the moving images with wide eyes, almost like a child. "I forgot. The world is big," she said softly. "In here. I forget." One night, Daniel noticed her trembling. She tried to hide it, but he could see her hands shaking. "They increased the tests," she whispered. "It hurts more now. They want to see how far I break." Daniel pressed his palm against the glass. "Don't let them," he said firmly. She looked up at him, and for the first time, a faint smile touched her lips. "You think I'm strong enough?" No. "You are," Daniel said, without hesitation. I wish I could get you out." Her smile faded. "They would kill you," she warned. But then her eyes softened. "And yet, part of me hopes you try." That night, Daniel lay awake in his small metal room. Staring at the ceiling, the idea of helping her had gone from impossible to inevitable. He didn't have a plan, not yet, but he had 7 days, maybe less, to make one the next time they spoke. Lyra leaned close and whispered something that made his skin go cold. They moved my execution date. It's in 3 days. Daniel felt the breath leave his chest. 3 days. He didn't have the skills, the weapons, or the codes. But he had one thing the scientists didn't, the will to try. He nodded slowly, his eyes locked on hers. Then, "I guess I better move fast," he said. Lyra's gaze held his for a long moment. Then she whispered, "I'll be ready." The next day, Daniel's shift felt like it dragged for years. Every hallway, every door, every humming machine seemed louder than usual. He couldn't stop thinking about Lyra's voice. 3 days, that number kept beating in his mind, like a drum. By the time his shift ended, he already knew what he was going to do. It was dangerous, reckless, and almost certain to fail, but doing nothing was worse if he failed. They would punish him and probably kill her if he succeeded. Maybe they could both disappear before anyone knew. He spent the night in the storage bay, stealing what little he could without drawing attention. A small toolkit, a strip of alien metal that could short certain locks, and a stolen keycard from an inattentive guard who was busy arguing over a gambling game. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. The plan was simple, too simple. Get into room 47. Break her out of the glass chamber, and run through the service tunnels before anyone noticed. He told himself it could work if he moved fast. The facility was quieter than usual that night. Daniel's footsteps echoed softly as he wheeled his cleaning cart toward the lower level. When he reached her corridor, the guards were gone. The glass was clear. Lyra looked up instantly, her eyes widening when she saw the tools hidden in his hands. "Daniel," she whispered, a mix of hope and fear in her voice. "Stay quiet," he said. Moving to the wall panel beside the glass, his fingers worked quickly, sliding the strip of alien metal into a narrow slot. Sparks hissed, and the panel's light flickered from red to orange. Lyra's eyes darted to the far end of the hall. 2 guards. "Making rounds," she whispered. Daniel's heart pounded. He had seconds, maybe less. He swiped the stolen keycard. The glass door slid open with a hiss of air. For the first time, there was nothing between them. Lyra stepped forward, but the cables connected to her cuffs pulled tight, stopping her. "Hold still," Daniel said. Pulling out a small cutting tool, he began slicing through the glowing cables. The hum of the machine growing louder. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. One cable snapped free. Then another. A sharp, high-pitched alarm screamed through the corridor. Daniel froze. "No," he muttered under his breath. Lyra's voice rose sharply. "Daniel, go. They're coming." But he kept working, cutting the last cable. The cuffs on her wrists flickered but didn't release. "I need a code," he realized, panic in his chest. Heavy boots thundered toward them. Lyra's eyes went wide. "Leave me," she shouted. Daniel shook his head. "Not happening." A shadow filled the end of the corridor, 2 guards with rifles raised. Daniel grabbed the cutting tool and shoved it back into his belt. He turned to Lyra, their eyes locking for a brief second. "I'll be back," he said, before she could answer. He sprinted toward the service hatch on the sidewall. Blaster fire scorched the air behind him. A bolt grazed his arm, burning through his sleeve. He dove into the narrow tunnel and slid the hatch shut, the sound of the lock engaging just as the guards reached it. Daniel ran through the maintenance tunnels, his breath ragged. The heat from the blaster burned stung. But it was nothing compared to the thought of leaving her behind. He found a hidden exit in the waste processing bay and slipped out into the cold night air. Outside, the rain poured harder than before. soaking him instantly somewhere deep inside. The facility, Lyra, was still trapped, and now she would pay the price for his failure. Daniel returned to his quarters hours later, wet, exhausted, and shaking with frustration. He barely had time to sit before his door slid open. A shadow stepped inside, a short, broad human with a scar running across his cheek. "You're lucky they don't know it was you," the man said in a low voice. Daniel stared. "Who are you?" The man glanced at the hallway, then stepped closer. "Name's Marek. I'm part of the underground." Daniel frowned. "What underground?" "The one that's been watching you since you started talking to the girl in room 47, Marek replied. "You want her out?" "You're going to need more than a cutting tool and stolen card." Daniel's pulse quickened. "You can help?" Marek smirked. "Help is a big word. But I can get you access to places you've never seen." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Thing is, you only get one more chance before they kill her." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Then, tell me what I need to do." That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his narrow bed, Marek's words echoing in his head. The first attempt had been rushed and foolish. The next one? It had to be perfect. But in the cold heart of the facility, Lyra lay in her glass prison again. Her wrists ached from tightened cuffs, her body weak from punishment. Still, in her mind, she replayed Daniel's voice. "I'll be back." She didn't know if he could keep that promise, but she held on to it like the last fragile thread of hope. Asterisk. Daniel sat across from Marek in a dim, narrow storage room deep in the maintenance sector. A single flickering light hung from the ceiling, throwing shadows across the walls. The smell of oil and rust was heavy in the air. Marek had laid out a crude map of the facility on an old metal crate, its surface scratched and dented. "This is where they keep her," Marek said, tapping a section labeled Level 9 Biocontainment. "You already know that part. But what you don't know is how to get her out without 50 guards on your back." Daniel leaned forward. "I'm listening." Marek pointed to another part of the map, a small circle labeled Central Control Hub. "Every door, every lock, every security system in this place runs through here," he said. "If we take control for even a few minutes, you can open her chamber, shut down the cameras, and walk her out." Daniel frowned. "And how do we take control of a place swarming with armed guards and scientists?" "That," Marek said with a faint smirk, "is where the blackout comes in." Marek explained that in 3 days, the facility would run a scheduled power test, a full shutdown of the main grid, switching everything to backup generators. For exactly 5 minutes, during that window, security systems would be weaker. Backup cameras would only cover certain areas, and guards would be distracted, making sure vital equipment stayed online. "It's not much time," Marek admitted. "But if we're fast, it's enough." Daniel nodded slowly. "What do I need?" "2 things," Marek replied. "First, a clearance code from a Level 5 officer that gets you into the biolab without triggering alarms. And second, someone who can guide you through the hidden maintenance shafts to avoid the patrol routes." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And you just happen to have both?" Marek's smirk widened. "Let's just say the underground has friends in low places. And high ones, too." The next night, Daniel began preparing. He stole a set of scientists' access clothes from the laundry bay. Silver coat, black gloves, and a data tablet to look official. He studied the shift patterns of guards near level 9, memorizing when the hallways were emptiest. Marek gave him a small ear device connected to their comms channel when the blackout hits. "I'll guide you step by step," Marek promised. But there was one thing Daniel hadn't told Marek. The risk wasn't just getting caught. If they even suspected Lyra was trying to escape, they wouldn't just lock her down. They would kill her instantly. That thought kept Daniel awake. It wasn't just about breaking into a lab. It was about making sure she lived long enough to leave it. Meanwhile, Inside room 47, Lyra sat on the cold metal floor. Her hands resting limply in her lap. Her wrists were raw from the cuffs. Her skin pale from the constant drain of energy the machines pulled from her. She had been punished for Daniel's failed attempt, no food for a day. Doubled testing cycles, but she hadn't broken. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard his voice, "I'll be back." On the second night, she noticed a small smudge on the glass, a mark she knew Daniel had left when he pressed his hand there before. She placed her own hand against it, closing her eyes for just a moment. She didn't know how or when, but she felt it, he was coming. On the third day, hours before the blackout, Daniel walked the facility with his cleaning cart, as usual. To anyone watching, he looked calm, inside. His pulse was a drumbeat in his ears. The ear device was silent until Marek's voice finally crackled through. "Showtimes in 2 hours. Stay near level 7 until I give the word." Daniel spent the time pacing a quiet maintenance hallway. When the lights suddenly flickered, Marek's voice came fast. "This is it. Blackout in 3, 2, 1. The entire facility went dark. For a second, there was silence. No hum of machines. No steady drone of lights. Just stillness. Then dim red emergency lights flickered on, bathing the corridors in a dull glow. "Move," Marek ordered. Daniel pushed his cart quickly. Turning down a maintenance shaft, he crawled through narrow metal tunnels. His knees aching, his breath loud in the tight space. At each turn, Marek's voice guided him. "Left. Here. Now down. Watch the drop. It's steep." Within minutes, Daniel reached a hatch overlooking level 9. Guards were scrambling to reset systems, their focus away from room 47. "Now," Marek whispered. "Swipe the card on the side door." Daniel slid through, his stolen clearance card beeping faintly. He hurried to Lyra's chamber. The glass was still closed, the cable still attached to her cuffs. She looked up, her eyes widening in shock. "You came," she breathed. "No time," Daniel said, pulling out a small control spike Marek had given him. He slammed it into the chamber's panel. Sparks flew. The glass hissed, and with a shudder, it began to slide open. Lyra stumbled forward, weak but moving. Daniel caught her, his arm around her shoulders. "We have to go," he said, but just as they turned toward the door, a voice barked behind them. "Stop right there." 2 guards had spotted them, rifles raised. Daniel's heart stopped. The 5-minute window was closing fast. The guards' voices echoed through the red-lit corridor. "Drop the prisoner. Now," one shouted, his rifle steady. Lyra's body stiffened in Daniel's arms, her breathing quick and shallow. Daniel's mind raced. He had no weapon, only the stolen clearance card, and a few seconds before they fired, Marek's voice hissed in his ear. "Right side service hatch." Daniel spotted it. A narrow panel halfway down the wall. Without thinking, he pulled Lyra toward it. Blaster fire ripped past them, scorching the walls. Lyra raised her hands out of instinct. A faint shimmer of energy rippled from her palms. Forming a weak shield, the blasts hit it and scattered like sparks in the rain. The service hatch was locked. Daniel slammed his shoulder into it, then shoved the clearance card through a gap at the edge. The door popped open with a metallic groan. He pulled Lyra inside and slammed it shut just as another blast hit where they had stood. Inside, the tunnel was pitch black, except for the faint red light from cracks in the walls. It smelled of dust and oil. Daniel could hear boots pounding the floor above them. The guards were splitting up, searching. "Keep moving," Marek urged in his ear. "You've got maybe 3 minutes before they reroute power and lock the tunnels." Daniel moved as quickly as the cramped space allowed. Lyra stumbled once, her legs weak from years of confinement. Daniel caught her before she fell. "Almost there," he said. Though he wasn't sure if he was lying, they dropped into a lower maintenance corridor, wider. but exposed to several open vents that led into the main hall. Through one, Daniel saw a squad of guards rushing past. One of them barked orders into a comm. Seal all exits. Level 9 is compromised. Marek's voice cut in, sharp. Forget. The northern route, it's swarming. Go to the loading bay on level 4. South side. Daniel froze. That's across open ground, he whispered. Then run fast. Marek replied, you're out of time. Daniel and Lyra crawled out of the shaft and into a long hallway dimly lit by emergency lights. They could hear the distant roar of generators coming back online. Backup power wouldn't last much longer. Lyra leaned heavily on Daniel, but kept pace, her eyes flicked to every shadow, her body tense. Why are you doing this? She asked suddenly, her voice trembling. Daniel didn't answer right away. Finally he said, because you asked me to? Something in her gaze softened. But the moment passed when a siren wailed overhead. Heavy boots thundered from the far end of the hall. Go, Daniel urged, pulling her through a side door into a narrow stairwell. They raced up to flights, Daniel's muscles burning. The door to level 4 was half open, leading to a wide chamber full of cargo crates and parked transport skiffs. The loading bay, but they weren't alone. 4 guards were stationed by the main exit. Their rifles ready, Marek's voice came fast. Daniel Powers coming back in 60 seconds. If you're not gone by then, you're both dead. Daniel scanned the room desperately. A tall stack of cargo crates stood to the left. Casting deep shadows, he pulled Lyra toward them, moving low and quiet. One guard turned slightly, sensing movement. Daniel froze, holding Lyra against the crate's cold metal wall. The guards started walking their way. Daniel's mind screamed for an answer, and then Lyra acted. She raised her hands and, despite her weakness, sent a small pulse of energy toward a crate on the far side of the bay. The crate rattled and crashed to the floor with a deafening clang. The guards all turned toward the noise, shouting. Daniel seized the moment, pulling Lyra toward the nearest parked skiff. He climbed in, helping her to the passenger seat. His hands flew over the controls. Thankfully, the key was still in place. The skiff roared to life. One guard spotted them and shouted, "Stop them!" Blaster fire lit the bay as Daniel slammed the throttle forward. The skiff shot toward the exit ramp, the wind whipping at their faces. They burst into the open night, rain slashing against them. Daniel pushed the skiff harder, weaving between jagged rocks and industrial towers behind them. 2 smaller patrol skiffs gave chase. Marek's voice barked in his ear, "Head east. I've got a pickup waiting by the canyon pass." The chase was brutal. Blaster shots hissed past. One, hitting the back of their skiff and sending sparks into the air. Lyra clutched the side, her hair plastered to her face from the rain. Daniel kept his eyes on the glowing canyon lights in the distance. Finally, they reached the pass, a narrow gap between 2 cliffs. A larger camouflage transport waited there with its rear ramp open. "Go, go, go!" Marek shouted from the pilot's seat. Daniel steered hard, launching the skiff up the ramp. The moment they were inside, the ramp slammed shut. The transport lifted off. Engines roaring. The pursuing skiffs circled outside. But it was too late. They were gone, swallowed by the stormy night sky. Daniel collapsed into a seat, drenched and breathing hard. Lyra sat beside him, her hands still shaking. For the first time in years, there were no walls around her. No glowing glass, no cables draining her life. She turned to him and whispered, "You kept your promise?" Daniel gave a tired smile. "And I'm not done yet," he said. But in the back of his mind, he knew the Empire would never stop hunting them. This was only the beginning. Asterisk. The storm outside battered the transport ship as it cut through the night sky. Rain hammered against the hull. The engines roared, and every few seconds, lightning flashed across the clouds. Daniel sat near the rear, his arms still aching from the blaster burn across from him. Lyra sat quietly, her eyes fixed on the streaking raindrops. She was free, but her expression told Daniel she didn't feel safe yet. Merrick stood near the cockpit, speaking quickly into a COM device. No, we broke her out, he said in a low voice. They've put every patrol ship in the sector on alert. We won't have long. Daniel moved closer. Where are we going? There's a safe house in the old mining zone, Merrick replied. But to get there, we have to pass through the Riddle Plains. Open airspace, no cover. Daniel frowned. That means if they find us there, we fight, Merrick finished. His tone grim, the minutes crawled by. Lyra's head leaned back against the cold wall. Her eyes closing for a moment, Daniel sat beside her, speaking softly, you holding up. She opened her eyes slowly. My body's weak, she admitted, but my mind feels stronger than it has in years. Her gaze met his, steady despite the fatigue. They will come for me, Daniel. They always do. Then we'll be ready, he said firmly, before she could answer. The ship jolted violently, warning alarms blared, and Merrick's voice rang out. Contact. We've got 2 interceptors on our tail. Daniel rushed to the viewport. Through sheets of rain, he saw 2 sleek black ships closing fast. Their lights cutting through the storm. They're armed, Merrick shouted. Hang on. The transport banked sharply, throwing Daniel and Lyra against the wall. Blaster fire streaked past the windows, one shot grazing the hull and rattling the entire ship. Lyra gripped the seat, her eyes flashing with a strange light. They won't. Stop, she said. Not unless we make them. What do you mean? Daniel asked, but she was already standing, moving toward the rear ramp. Daniel followed, grabbing her arm. Lyra, if you can barely stand, I can still fight, she said, her voice stronger now. They took my freedom. They hurt me. I won't hide while they try to take it back. Merrick's voice crackled over the intercom. Daniel, I need someone to man the tail gun. Those interceptors will tear us apart. Daniel looked at Lyra, torn. She met his eyes and gave a small nod. Go, she said. I'll do my part. Daniel sprinted up to the tail gun controls, gripping the handles as targeting screens flickered to life. The rain blurred his vision. But he tracked the nearest interceptor and fired. The turret boomed, sending a spray of bright energy bolts into the storm. One shot hit home, forcing the enemy ship to veer away. Meanwhile, Lyra stepped to the rear hatch, placing her hands against the cold metal. Her cuffs had been removed, and for the first time in years, her power flowed freely. Blue light swirled between her fingers, growing brighter with every heartbeat. The second interceptor closed in from the side, firing at the cockpit. Merrick swore and pulled the ship into a desperate roll. Daniel's turret missed the shot, but Lyra's didn't. She unleashed a burst of raw energy that tore through the storm and slammed into the enemy ship, sending it spinning into the clouds. For a moment, the only sound was the pounding rain and the steady hum of the engines. Merrick's voice came over the intercom. Both ships are down. But that won't be the last of them. Daniel left the turret and joined Lyra at the hatch. She was breathing hard, her body trembling. That took everything I had, she admitted. But it felt good. Daniel smiled faintly. That's because it was your choice this time. They reached the Riddle Plains an hour later. The rain had slowed, but the plains stretched endlessly beneath them. No mountains, no canyons, nowhere to hide. Daniel stayed near Lyra, scanning the horizon. Every shadow in the clouds felt like it could be another ship. Halfway across, Merrick's voice came again. Tight, urgent. We've got another contact. Bigger this time, a massive silhouette emerged from the clouds ahead. A cruiser. Bristling with weapons, Daniel's stomach dropped. We can't outrun that, he said. No. Merrick agreed, but maybe we can get past it. If one? Of us stays behind to hold them off. Daniel's heart pounded. You're talking about a suicide run, he said. Merrick didn't answer. Lyra stepped forward. Her voice calm but firm. Then we choose the one who can survive it. She turned. To Daniel, they can't kill me, Isley. You've seen what I can do. Let me distract them while you and Marek get to the safe house. Daniel shook his head instantly. No. I didn't come all this way to watch you trade one prison for another. Their eyes locked. The ship drew closer to the cruiser's massive guns. The choice had to be made now. Daniel finally spoke. Then we fight together. Lyra gave a small smile. Together, she agreed. The cruiser's guns lit the sky as the transport dove toward the enemy ship. Inside, Daniel manned the turret again, firing into the storm. Lyra stood in the open hatch. Energy swirling around her like a living storm. It was the last stand before freedom, and they both knew it. The storm had thinned into a steady drizzle, but the sky ahead was lit with the glow of weapons fire. The enemy cruiser loomed over them, a dark mountain of steel in the clouds. Its guns tracked the transport, ready to tear it apart. Inside, Marek shouted over the com, "Brace yourselves. We're going straight through their kill zone." Daniel gripped the turret handles, firing burst after burst into the cruiser's flank. Bright explosions rippled across its shields, but it wasn't enough to stop the massive ship from closing in. Behind him, Lyra stood in the open hatch, her long hair whipping in the wind. Her eyes glowed with that strange inner light. Blue energy danced along her fingers. Growing brighter with every breath she took, they're charging the main gun. Marek warned. If that shot hit, the transport would be gone in a single flash. Daniel's instinct screamed to tell Lyra to get back inside. But one look at her face told him she had no intention of hiding. She stepped forward until her feet were at the very edge of the hatch. The rain hit her skin and steamed away as the energy around her burned hotter. They kept me locked in a glass box for years, she said over the roar of the wind. They wanted to use me like a weapon. But they never understood I choose how to fight. The cruiser's main cannon lit up. Daniel kept firing, his shots sparking against the ship's shields. Marek pulled the transport into a desperate dive, but it wouldn't be enough to escape. Lyra raised both hands. A blinding wave of blue light burst from her palms, cutting through the air and slamming into the cruiser's main gun. The weapon shuddered, its glow flickering wildly before exploding in a burst of white fire. The shockwave rocked both ships. Daniel held on as the transport jolted violently. The cruiser's front section went dark, its guns falling silent. They had a chance, but only if they moved now, full speed. Marek yelled. The transport roared past the crippled cruiser, engines screaming. But even as they cleared the danger, Daniel turned to see Lyra collapse against the hatch frame. Her body shook violently, the glow fading from her hands. Daniel was beside her in seconds, pulling her away from the edge. "You're hurt," he said, panic in his voice. She shook her head weakly. "No, just empty," she whispered. "They took so much from me. It takes time to give this much back." For the next hour, the transport sped low over the endless plains. No more patrols appeared. The storm finally broke, revealing a pale dawn on the horizon. When the mining zone came into view, a sprawl of abandoned towers and deep canyon pits, Marek guided the transport into a hidden hangar built into the cliffside. The engines powered down, and for the first time since the breakout, silence filled the air. Daniel helped Lyra down the ramp. The ground beneath them was dry and solid, the scent of dust replacing the sharp tang of rain. Lyra looked around slowly, taking in the empty space. "This is safe?" she asked. "For now," Marek answered. "No one comes here anymore." Inside the safe house, a dim but warm chamber lit by small lamps. Daniel sat with Lyra at a metal table. Marek busied himself with securing the doors and scanning the skies. For a while, no one spoke. Daniel watched Lyra trace her fingers over the smooth surface of the table, as if testing the reality of it. Finally, she looked at him. "You risked everything," she said quietly. "They would have killed you, and you still came." Daniel met her gaze. "You asked for help," he said simply. "I wasn't going to let them take the rest of your life." Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Her skin was cool, but the touch was steady. "In my people's way," she said, "when someone saves you, they become part of you." They spent the rest of the day in the safe house. Marek moved in and out, bringing supplies from hidden storage. Lyra rested, her strength slowly returning. She and Daniel spoke in low voices. She told him about her childhood before the scientists took her wide fields, starlit nights, a home she could barely remember. Daniel told her about Earth, about real oceans, green forests, and the warmth of sunlight without a glass barrier. When night fell, Marek returned with news. "They've locked down the entire sector." He said, "They're not just hunting her anymore, Daniel. They're hunting both of you." Daniel nodded. "Then they'd better be ready for a long search," he said, glancing at Lyra. "We're not going back." Later, when Marek had gone to check the perimeter, Lyra and Daniel stood near the open hangar door, looking out at the canyon under. The moonlight, the wind was cool, the night still. "You stole me back from them," she said softly. "You gave me freedom." Daniel shook his head. "No, Lyra. You were never theirs to begin with." For a long moment, they stood in silence. Then she leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then let's see where freedom takes us." The camera of the mind fades. On their silhouettes against the moonlit canyon, two fugitives bound together not by chains, but by choice, and somewhere far away. The Empire plotted their return, but for now, the night was theirs.